Welcome to Storytelling with Lindsay Bednar.
Yeah, I'm Irie. I can do whatever.
Nice.
I don't mind talking about cannabis because I do it all the time, but it doesn't have to be that necessarily either.
Yeah.
It can be any sort of combination of how I think it weaves into everything. There's a plant use for everyone,
Yeah.
whether it's a house that you live in that's built of hempcrete or textiles or paper or seeds, oil. Like there are so many non-psychoactive uses for cannabis that I think people don't fully understand, that we have a lot of regulations around an agricultural crop for one very, very tiny molecule that happens to be in there.
Yeah. Let's get into all
That's
that.
always a good one.
Yeah. I'm just sitting here like, wow, information, love it. Okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, because Minnesota, we went through our legalization process, and I think probably last time we talked, they had only recently legalized the hemp-based edibles. So the 50 milligrams of hemp-derived THC that you could have in, gummies, chocolates, beverages, tinctures, topicals, that sort of thing, but no smokable products, no flour, no concentrates. And, that was it still is the market that we're in right now, except as of August 1st of last year, legalization passed. So adult use, you can own up to, you can grow up to 8 plants in your house. You can have up to a certain amount of concentrates and flour on you, but you can't legally buy and sell that stuff yet. Everything right now is hemp derived still. And we are waiting for our legislation to pass and have all of our licenses available and applications open.
No way. So you can grow up to 8 plants in your house?
Yeah, you can have 4 that are in vegetation, so early stages where they're not flowering, and then 4 that are in your flowering stage that then you'll harvest and dry and cure, and that's your smokable product.
Okay. So in even one plant, how much would that produce that's usable that most people would, take from it?
That all has to do with the size of the space that you're growing in, the medium that you're growing in, the plant that you're growing, the kind of lights that you use. It's very, very, very variable. But I would say an average, maybe you could get a couple ounces. If you're a newer grower, you're not going to get huge yields. But a lot of people don't need a ton of cannabis. But it's a good practice just to try,
Well, so you could grow
because you can.
your own organic, know exactly the source where it came from.
Yeah, it's been really cool. There's been a lot of home grower guilds and groups that have popped up in the city, in the suburbs, a lot of different places, and people just teaching each other how to grow different methods. There's so many different ways. Like I always advocate that people grow, especially if it's a home grow, in organic living soil, and they, feed it only nutrients if they have to. I believe in building your soil, and, if you do that right, you really only need to add water. Um, but I think anybody, however they can grow, right? If you are intimidated, the first time I grew, I used potting soil that I bought at Home Depot and Miracle Grow. And like now I would never do that, but now I know better, so I do better. And I just think everybody starts somewhere. So sometimes you just have to do with what you can and then figure it out as you go.
Right. Yeah. And so with what you are teaching in your courses, is this like an offshoot of that? Is the homegrown?
No, I don't, I have grown. I don't consistently like indoor in the summer. And last year we weren't able to grow a full season outside, so I didn't plant. So this will be my first year cultivating outdoors. I'm going to get some big pots for my back deck and grow out there.
Oh, look at you
I'm excited.
cultivate.
Well, I don't, I hope that the flower that I grow, like, that'll have my love, but I also know that it'll have my children's sticky fingers and my dog and my cat. And there are some cannabis, a lot of it grown outdoors, people use for concentrates because you can kind of clean some of that stuff up. You're taking all of the plant medicine off of the biomass, the green stuff, and separating all that. So I probably won't turn mine into concentrates, but I might turn it into a topical. You can, grind it up in the oven and decarb it and then infuse it into oil and use it for different things. So it doesn't have to necessarily be something that you smoke. You can create products for your body with it, or or you can smoke it if you do a good job.
Well, and I'm so fascinated by this, for people to be able to grow it themselves, knowing what we know about how you speak to plants and the love that
Hmm.
if those studies where if you're yelling at a plant versus how if you speak to it lovingly, how it grows differently. Same thing in the water frozen. Did they freeze it? That Japanese scientist, you remember that study where he oh, it's the same kind of thing. Anyways, he spoke differently to two different subjects, and they looked very differently under the
Yeah.
microscope. So I would assume that you like just knowing what we know about energy and how everything has a frequency to be able to have that control over what you're using, I think is super cool.
Well, and I think that so our environments play a big part. If you're growing hydroponically in water, you're growing in, just regular potting soil, that's not really the earth that you're coming from. But a lot of people believe in taking the earth that you live in and making amendments to it so you get the right nutrient mix. But then year after year, it's like you understand the basic agricultural principles, like how now we sort of just strip everything out of the soil and we don't need of everything and replant to rebuild nutrients. And it's kind of the exact opposite of that, where we're building nutrients, we're feeding our soil, we're making it its own, rhizome, microbiosphere, and it's doing all the things, and we're just adding a little bit to it. And that expression comes out in the plant. It comes out in the flavor. How hot the sun is, that makes a difference in what the end product is. How heavy the winds are, right? Like then they grow bigger roots, and that's the resilience that they get. So all of these different things factor in. So there's a personal touch to it, specifically where you're growing when you're outside, but then it is how much do you tend to it? Are you defoliating it? Are you pulling out the branches as it's growing to make sure that each cola gets its own amount of light? Like there is so much personal touch that goes into it. And there's a lot of people that really believe when you find the right cannabis grown by the right people, that's why it's medicine. It's not just the cannabinoids and the terpenes and the esters and the thiols and all those other good little parts. It's actually like that energy transfer of the people who are making medicine to heal people.
Yeah, I absolutely uh, buy into that. I mean, you think about how some of those things are probably cultivated and it was maybe in a seedy environment and it was hidden, or if it was people doing it for profit and their intentions were I think all of that has to play a part in it because, yeah, everything's energy. And I just think this is going to produce just a lot better product, whether it's just for the people using it um,
Mm-hmm.
or elsewhere. And you spoke to, sorry, were you going to say something?
Well, I met a woman the other day and we were talking about, it came up and she's like, oh, I just started using like hemp flack for her chicken coop. And she was like, it's so cool and it works so good. And she was all excited. She's like, but it's really expensive. And I'm like, you can grow your own and like just do it that way. And she's like, oh, I never thought of that. So, like, just all the
Mm,
uses that you have for it that people don't realize it, like, it's actually a really good substitute for a lot of things. And it was not a substitute for most of history.
right. It
It's
was,
only recently that we've needed to find other things to fix problems we didn't have.
yeah, I mean, that's the whole plant-based world, right? That's where we started. And now it somehow became the alternative, which is just so ironic and frustrating all at once. I want you to talk more about the uses because, like you said, you don't, if you grow it in your home, you can use it for a myriad of things. It doesn't have to be for
Mhm.
smokable or for, um, yeah. So if you could speak to some of those, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, if you, so, mostly when you grow it and then you harvest it and you dry it for a certain amount of time because you want to get the water out of it, because as you store it, you don't want it to go moldy, but you also don't want to take too much water out of it because you don't want it to be dry. And so once you get to that stabilized process or cured, just like we cure meats, we cure dog food, we cure wood, we basically anything that's wet as it comes out goes through this same process. So cannabis, not really any different. Although, to be honest, I'd never thought about how they make dog food until somebody gave me that analogy one time.
Huh.
And I thought, yeah, no, that makes sense. I just don't think about that. And I think even growing up north, I don't think about the way lumber was dried, but like, yeah, duh, I guess I saw that growing up and I didn't realize that's necessarily what was happening.
Right.
So when you take that dried plant, you can smoke it if it's good. You can, soak it in different solvents to get the resin out of it. And those are more advanced techniques than just to get concentrates out of there. But you can, like I said, you can grind it up. You can activate it in your oven. So you have to bring it to a certain temperature for your THCA to convert to THC and become a psychoactive ingredient. But once you do that, then you can start to infuse it into other mediums like coconut oil, like olive oil. You can put it into alcohol and make tinctures. You can make tinctures with olive oil, lots of different things. So either things you can add into food for cooking. A tincture is something that you put under your tongue and you take sublingually, so it goes through your mucosal layer. An edible is something that goes through your digestive tract. And we have a lot of those on the market. So there's not a ton of people making their own because it's a lot of work to do all that. And you can go out in the market right now and find it. But I think it's somewhat prohibitively expensive if somebody's using that as medicine every day. 50 milligrams is roughly between 20 and $25. And that's not a lot. I know a lot of people who have high pain that can use 250, 300, 400 milligrams a day. And so a lot of those people go out of states to places like Missouri where they don't have, I think they go up to 2,000 milligrams. Oklahoma has really high milligram limits. Michigan's is a little bit higher. I think maybe it goes up to 500. So there's a real difference though between, 50 milligrams at, $25 and being able to go get 200 milligrams for $8 from another market. It makes it work when you do the driving distance. So
Right.
Minnesota needs our recreational market to be open and producing products that people can buy because all of our money is going out of state. And right now we are surrounded by prohibition states. North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, Wisconsin, none of them have a legal market. So cannabis tourism is something that, like I've participated in for the last 5 or 6 years, ever since we've had legal markets that you could go to and buy products. I've been a tourist. And now Minnesota has that opportunity because, and especially we've got this nice little carve out here. And it just is going to depend on how long it takes until we get licenses.
What is holding up the licensing? Because it seems like uh, with with everything, they've been pretty progressive on moving this forward. At least, I mean, I know we weren't the first state, and it seemed to take longer than
32nd, actually.
the 32nd.
Hmm.
Wow,
Not even in the top half.
that's surprising. Uh, okay, so why? What was the holdup?
I think the holdup is around writing, now we're in the rulemaking part of the legislature and it just takes time and they want to write the correct rules in so they see it. And other states have just implemented in different ways and been able to do it much quicker. They've taken the route similar to like New York, New Jersey, and we've seen, New York legalized in either 2020 or 2021, and they just recently started opening their dispensaries. So they have, a thriving gray market and they have a small legal market and they have a ton of licenses that are not, they haven't given out to people yet. They've only opened a handful of manufacturing facilities and cultivation facilities.
Mm,
So each, because each market is different, I like to use the analogy of, it's not one market, it's 37 markets in a trench coat. And it, it's it's tough because each state regulates on its own differently. And as much as they all want to play and try to be one market, you really can't. And it's difficult to find, synthesis across it.
Hmm. Yeah, okay. And you said something about the making the concentrates. Okay, so really in layman's term and dumb it down for me. What is it that you're doing and what is the intention of concentrates? What are you extracting and for what purpose?
So when you have what we usually think of as weed, which is the cola or the flower, we'll call it, and on each flower there's these little glands that look like water towers, is how I describe them, and they are filled with our cannabinoids and our terpenes and all sorts of other good things. But that's what really gives us our experience. So cannabinoids like THC and CBD and all of the other ones that go along with it, those are our main drivers. But then the things that give it its smell are terpenes, and they have a whole secondary set of effects that they give us. And so you take those trichomes, is what they're called, and there's tons of different ways of doing extraction, but essentially you're taking what's inside. So I like to use an orange as my analogy. So you take an orange, right? And that's the same as the flower. And then after you peel open the orange, you have your slice of orange. And then when you peel that slice of orange open, you've got your little pockets, and then you can squeeze those out, and that's the juice. So in the essence, if you look at the flower, is kind of like your orange, and then your concentrate is just the tiny little bits of juice that come out when there's no pulp left. I mean, sometimes there's pulp, but that's just dirty concentrate.
Okay, crazy. So the when you get the concentrate, that is when you can turn it into other forms, use it for in oils, lotions, things like that.
Right. So those are, instead of, extraction is getting just the oil on itself, and infusion is when I was saying you take the raw flour, you grind it up, you activate it, and then you mix it in with one of these other mediums, and then you squeeze the plant matter out, is the very traditional way of doing it.
Mm.
So butter or olive oil, very common. You put it in your oven, you decarb it, you take it out, you put it in a pan of oil, you let it sit at a certain temperature for a certain amount of time, and then you strain it out using cheesecloth, squeeze it all out. It can be difficult if you don't know what you're working with. You're not going to know what your percentage is. And that's a traditional way of making edibles. So it's going to go through your digestive system, and that takes longer for it to activate. Its duration is going to be longer. So it's just a different kind of effect than a lot of the edibles that are on the market today. So it's like definitely something to take low and slow.
Right. That's when people overdo it, right?
And then they never want to try it again, and it's like, no, you just did it wrong once.
Right.
But again, even if you don't like it, you can still rub it on your body. You can put it into a balm that you rub on, your ankle. Or I broke my wrist this summer, and I was able to take my wrist out of my like my arm out of my cast, and I would take it out every night, and I would put CBD cream on it, and I took super high doses of it to help fight off the infection and the inflammation. And it's, like, it wasn't great. The whole thing sucked, but I do think that I'm like mostly pretty good now.
What'd you do to your hand? I don't even
Oh,
know that
I
story.
no, I was, yeah, it was really sad. I was in Chicago, and I had had a really fun night. My girlfriends had a launch party the night before, and I was meeting some other friends for breakfast. And I was like bopping down these stairs, and the river was over to the left. And I was like so happy looking at it, and it was shiny and sparkly. And the street curved down, and I wasn't looking, and I just stepped off because I was looking over to the left, and there wasn't a stair, but there was in front of me.
Oh God.
And I just like very much fell and broke my wrist.
Oh man. So did you have to like did you know it right away or did you find out like
I did try to go to brunch,
oh
and my waiter was like, "Oh, baby, no, no, you need to go to the hospital." And he made me an ice pack, and he wrapped my arm, and my girlfriends put me in a cab, and I had to like big girl it
oh
at
my God.
Northwestern. It was Lollapalooza weekend.
Oh man. How'd you even get into a cab, Lollapalooza?
Well, so it was, luckily, it was 7:45 in the morning. So the ER had emptied out from the night before and hadn't quite filled up from the
Uh,
day. And I still spent 8.5 hours there. I think the whole ordeal took me, because then they had to set it. And then I was in Chicago. And so I still had to drive home the next
Oh
day
my
with my like
gosh.
right broken arm. And it was huge. And it was just like, it was not great. So it's a rough August and September. My recovery is, oof.
Yeah, no kidding. 8 hours in the ER alone would be like that far away from home, you know.
Sorry, my voice all of a sudden. Arr, arr.
That's okay. Your arm is healed now, or it's getting
My arm is, yeah, no, it
okay.
was, I got my cast off in early October. So I've had like a good 5 months
Yeah.
to be workshopping it. I always ask people now, that was the handshake okay? Did you like that? Could it be stronger? Did you, my wrist, could you hear it clicking
It
as
looks like
I,
empty.
and yeah, no, but I think so far it's workshop pretty well.
Yeah, you've got your strength back.
And I'm a hugger too. So like if my handshake is not 100, like
Right.
it's not getting that much use.
No, let's just bring it in.
Yeah.
So okay, you use primarily the CBD for pain, which is what I'm, or is it THC?
I wouldn't say necessarily. I think CBD is really good for inflammation, and it's really good for sort of like, I say CBD is what you don't feel. And so it's good for sort of overall calming and wellness. And you don't really get high from it. You don't feel it, but it helps you not feel some of the things that were bothering you
Mm-hmm.
before.
Okay.
But I always say a little bit of THC helps you enhance it a little more, and vice versa. Like if you have something that's high in THC and you add a little bit of CBD to it, just because they're hitting different parts of your body, it enhances the effect.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you said that because that kind of segues into something I wanted to ask you about is the THC seltzer craze.
Hmm.
Um,
It's a craze, man.
it is a craze. I mean, seltzers just in general are a craze.
Well, and you say seltzer, but it's not just seltzer, it's soda, it's coffees, it's sugars, it's tablets, it's
Mm,
sauces, it's freeze dried ice cream, like you name it. And they're like, can we put THC in it? And I'm not hating on it, but like I am very much, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I get the novelty of a lot of it, but I don't know what the longevity of a product like that is. Like, what is the demand for people wanting infused all of this?
right.
And
Yeah.
especially because there are many products now that you can just mix into things. So, there's like Ripple is a popular brand, and they have these quick sticks, and they're 10 milligrams. So if you want to make a party dip, you can buy yourself a tub of top the tater and rip open 10 of those sticks. And now you've got a 100 milligram party dish that's delicious and appropriate for every occasion.
Okay. I didn't realize they were doing that with foods. Like, I'm thinking of like
Hmm.
the ranch packets that you put in a thing. It's like that
Oh, that's, yeah, you can get that. You can get taco seasoning. You can
kind of
get
wow.
like, yeah, it's a lot.
Okay. The
It's, I mean,
seltzers.
it's innovative.
Yeah, and the seltzers totally make sense to me because I know of people who have uh, quit drinking, for instance, but they want to
Hmm.
have a beverage and they want to, relax and maybe catch a little buzz, or whatever, and kind of be celebratory. So that totally makes sense to me. I didn't realize that there are so many other offshoots of where people are putting it in, but
But I mean, even in the beverage category, it's not just seltzers. There's like over 300 different beverage SKUs alone.
yeah, beer. There's on tap beer at a lot of places, right? And
On like on tap THC beverages,
THC, yeah. Or is it's not beer?
they
Is it beer?
no, it's not beer. I mean, it is seltzers, but it's sodas, it's aqua frescas, it's like just all of these different categories.
Got
And even within the seltzer category, there's like, does it have sugar? Does it not have sugar? Is it, 5 milligrams? Is it 10 milligrams? Is it nanotechnology? Is it more traditional technology? There's just all of these variables. And now that here in Minnesota, you can buy it at Total Wine, you can buy it at Top 10, and people go in there and they truly have no idea what to buy. I don't, I can guess what to buy, but there are so many choices. And it's, again, not an inexpensive choice. A lot of those times you're spending 20, 25 bucks on a 4 pack. And if it's not a tasty 4 pack, that kind of feels like a waste of $25. And I've wasted some $25.
Well, yeah, I think you can buy it like
I mean, in the name of
supermarkets
science.
in in Rapids. Like I think you can get it at,
You can.
yeah,
Hmm.
for one.
Yeah. And at
Well,
the
some more
vape
takers.
store.
Yeah.
And at actually both of the liquor stores and at the vape shop.
Okay.
I've maybe bought some beverages
Yeah.
up there.
Perhaps.
But you can get them, Nopo has them now. You can get them
Okay.
at, they have them at Elemento Pizza. They're,
Yeah.
they're everywhere.
Yeah. Well, and I think anytime something is just more widely known, used, whatever, the stigma starts to pull back a little bit more, which is making so many more people feel comfortable of just like I can go out to dinner and I can buy it off the menu, and so I think people are just feeling more comfortable to use it, and I'm seeing so many more people uh, partake in both the THC and the CBD. But one of the questions that I have gotten a lot is why do they typically sell the two together? And you kind of spoke to that of how they work hand in hand. But
Hmm.
if you were to just get a CBD or just a THC, what would you be? I know if it was a CBD, you'd be lacking kind of like that the high feeling from the THC. But what about the reverse?
Right. If you get the high THC, you'll get the psychoactive effects of it. You won't necessarily get some of the same body relaxation or inflammation reduction that you get with the THC
Mm,
because they just hit the way they work in your body is different. THC hits a different set of receptors, and CBD is a reuptake inhibitor. So it helps to keep enzymes in your body that don't break down the endocannabinoids that our body already makes.
Oh, yeah. That was one of the most fascinating
Uh-huh.
things that I learned in our first podcast is how we have an endocannabinoid system. And I've had a lot of people who have recited that and shared it with others. Like, oh, did you know
Mhm.
this naturally occurs in our body?
This is how it works.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. You have to, you have tone in your ECS and you have too much or too little or, it really, I think it's sort of like vitamin D is how I describe it to people. Like we here in Minnesota, we try as hard as we can. Like we're out there every chance we get. Every time there's sun, I will prop myself in front of something and just, but it's not anywhere near enough.
Right.
And even in the summer, it's not enough. And
Yeah.
I think that that's not necessarily, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be living here. It doesn't mean that this is uninhabitable land. It just means that there are other ways we can supplement that. And I think cannabis is very similar. Like it's a plant that nature gave us to help supplement for all of the things that we just need.
So how would you know if your endocannabinoid system is like, for instance, I just had a hormone panel that's going to be a
Hmm.
future episode breaking all of that down. Fascinating. I was vitamin D deficient, which
Ooh, by how much? I also was too, and B12.
I forget what my levels are, but she bumped me up to 10,000 IU's. Uh,
I'm on 50 right now.
okay, yeah.
I might have been. I'm a hermit though. I mean, look at me. I'm like vampire pale.
I mean, I was taking. I felt like a lot of vitamin D prior to that, and I'm just like you.
Not
I'm trying to
enough.
get in the sun as much as I can when we are blessed with it here, but it wasn't enough. So uh, I think more people are just really getting interested in how our system is functioning and what we're lacking due to how they have stripped our soil of so much that our bodies have had for generations, and we're in this
Hmm.
generation that we're not getting the same nutrients that we used to. So
Well, and so in my business has changed a little bit, and you alluded to that, and I do still have courses that I teach in the larger community, but I've really shifted my focus internally inside the Ganjier community and developed my own set of programming in there. So in our weekly industry knowledge building, we focus monthly on a subject, and this month it's all about soil health. And so it's really, really interesting to me to start digging into the difference in the soil that we had 150 years ago, the practices that they used, and the food that they got because of it was so much more nutrient dense.
Mhm.
And it's not that the tomatoes didn't still look like tomatoes, because they still look fundamentally the same, but the color is different, the smell is different, the texture is different, because it had all of these different things, and we were amending the soil, and we were planting cover crops, and we were doing these different things where we weren't stripping it of everything. And now we're just in this complete opposite phase where most of the food that we get is not coming from healthy soil, and a lot of it is grown hydroponically indoors. And it's not to say that there's something fundamentally wrong with that. We can have tomatoes in the winter and lettuce, and there is benefit to being able to have vegetables and fresh produce in times that we wouldn't before. But it's really figuring out, what are we giving up for our benefit.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. And so, our is our own innate endocannabinoid system affected by the soil that has changed over the years?
I don't know what makes the endocannabinoid system fluctuate
Okay.
necessarily, but what I know is, when you use cannabis, like, a lot of people pick a dose and that's what they jump to, and they kind of see what that's at. And so earlier I said start low and go slow. And so the idea that I try to push with people is to titrate up just a little bit at a time and see how your body reacts to that. Give it time. It doesn't have to be a first time I want to get really, really high. It can be, I can take a small dose tonight, see how that goes. I can take, twice that the next night, then see how that goes, and really just start to respond to your body. But you also have to know what your intention is.
Mm,
And there's some people that their intention is solely to relieve knee pain, and that's what they're trying to do. And so you have to be able to be in touch with your body to say, like, okay, am I feeling this pain? Is it lessening? And that's a connection that not all of us are used to making, like having a relationship with something in our body that isn't working, that isn't like a frustrated, like my wrist. I was so frustrated with myself and so mad at myself, and just like, it's my right hand. Like, we had a camping trip, like we still went camping, but it wasn't fun for anyone. It was fun. We had a great time. But it was, like mom with, like 8 days post
oh
breaking my wrist, trying to go camping with, and we have a year and a half year old at that point. So it was just, we did it, but it wasn't great. And it hurt a lot. And I think it hurt, like, it hurt spiritually, but it hurt physically a lot.
right.
But I would know the difference, in the morning if I took a large dose of CBD versus the days that I didn't, and just the way that it felt, because it was such a dull bone ache for me.
Mm,
And then it was also just the swelling and inflammation. I mean, my hand was enormous. And so being able to topically apply things that helped on that surface level, and then taking the large doses of CBD internally, helps to, just calm down the inflammation. Because essentially, when our body has something that's wrong with it, whether it's, a sprain type injury or a viral infection, whatever it is, it produces a cytokine storm, and it sends all these little warriors in there to be like, hey, you need help and we're going to fix it. But sometimes it sends too much. And, cannabinoids do a good job of kind of like holding some of that stuff back and being like, it's cool, guys. Like, you don't have to, you can like stop sending all the people here. We're good. And so there's a lot of studies that go around COVID that talk about people who use CBD and THC had a lot easier time recovering, because their bodies weren't producing these enormous attacks on the COVID. They were producing some, and then CBD and THC were kind of just coming in and saying, like, we got it, we're cool, like, you can calm down. I'm not saying that is how it is for everyone,
yeah, yeah.
but I mean, I think I've had COVID like 4 or 5 times at this point, and like,
Just keeps coming around. The gift that keeps on giving.
keeps giving.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people who swore by uh, cannabis throughout their COVID stint. It was like, this is the
Right.
only thing that is getting me through.
Hmm.
And
Well, and I think that's what, like coming out of that into a market like beverage, that here we're beverage people. Like right now, I'm drinking a beverage. I guarantee there's a beverage in front of you. There might even be two.
mhm,
Sometimes there's three beverages in front of me. Like that's just, we're always drinking something. So it's not a stretch to add a different kind of beverage to that. We're seeing all sorts of mushroom tinctures, like wellness beverages are a thing. Cannabis aside, like that is just much more in the mainstream now. So it's not that far fetched. And then when you're in a culture like ours where people are drinking for every occasion, they're not looking that closely at the can that somebody's drinking. Now they'll definitely smell you if you're the only person in a party full of 40 people who lights up. But if you're drinking a beverage, they might
it's
not.
just
They also might
yeah.
not drink any of the beverages you tried to offer them,
Yeah, I
but you
mean,
try.
I think you said start low and slow, and I think
Hmm.
some people um, might not know what that is too. Like, I think I would tell them 5 milligrams, but I don't know if that's accurate.
I think it all depends on, again, what they are trying to solve for and also their age and their experience level.
Mm,
There's a great brand that came out called Mary and Jane, and they have these little melts that come in a cute tin, and they're 1 milligram. And a lot of people, I think, look at that and they're like, 1 milligram? Like, is that even going to do anything? But their goal isn't for you to get like violently high. It's to take the edge off. It's to just have a little bit. And that might be 2 milligrams, that might be three, but they have something called their dose discovery kit. So it takes you on a little journey of trying to figure out what is your dose. And maybe your dose is 5 milligrams, maybe your dose is 10. And then, probably that's not a good product for you anymore, to be honest, because then at 10 milligrams, you're probably not going to want 10 melts.
right,
But you learn that. And a lot of people are actually very low dose consumers. They just don't know it because most products are starting at that 5, 10. God only knows if it's something that somebody baked in their kitchen and you have no idea. Those could be very high milligram edibles. And at these lower dosages, it's much more therapeutic versus recreational.
right. Is the age 18 or 21 for
21.
21? Okay, so if society is starting to see it more as medicine, which it is, um, do you see that ever changing? And my follow up question to that is, have you seen a connection and benefit of with people who have ADD, ADHD using cannabis?
So the first question is, do I think that that will change? Like, will it go in the opposite direction and be more regulated, or will it open up to medical exploration? Is that
Will
the
it, yeah,
question?
will it open up to medical exploration?
So it very possibly could. We're waiting to hear if Congress is going to reschedule. So right now it is a Schedule 1, which is like the worst of the worst. Like it has zero medical benefits, which is insane when you think of how many states we have medically here. They're looking to reschedule it to Class 3, and that would allow there to be some medical studies done, which is great. There's a lot of speculation that it could get patented at that level, and that could become problematic. I'm a deschedule, just no schedule. Let it be agriculture and let's farm it like that. And we can figure out, like I said, it's all agriculture except that one molecule. So let's figure out what we can do to not have to regulate it and tax it to death.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that's my fear is there's a lot of industries in cannabis, like most of them are not doing well, and a lot of it has to do with regulations and taxes. And there is tax benefit. You can see these communities that are getting infusions of cash and capital because of cannabis, but if they're doing it at the behest of these companies that are failing, that's not a sustainable working model. And it's also not good for communities to churn through a lot of these different jobs and dispensaries that they're counting on for longer term investments in their communities that don't have longevity.
Right. Is that, I would assume that that is the consensus of most people who are involved in the cannabis community, is you Do you not want it regulated?
That's an interesting one. And I think definitely in the circle that I spend time in, that is mostly the consensus. But there's a lot of people in the industry for a lot of different reasons. And like, my heart is with the plant and the people and that connection. And that's just not everybody has that same pure love. And
Mm,
that's capitalism, baby.
right. That's
Like,
yeah, that's what I was
I,
wondering.
you know,
Uh-huh.
I see what you're doing.
I see the dollar
I
sign.
respect a hustler,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
but I do think that there are limitations to that. I do wish the cannabis industry was just full of people who loved the plant and wanted to get it out to the masses and make sure people had access to medicine. But these are all important modalities. And to your point of normalization earlier, it is important that we be able to consume things in similar ways that we're doing other things and just let it not be a big deal.
Right. Yeah, so the second thing I was wondering, knowing that it's 21 plus, and just thinking of the rise in ADD and ADHD, and
Hmm.
knowing how overprescribed Adderall and the likes are for the younger generation. I mean, it's funny because even when it crossed my mind, like, is this ever going to be something that's going to be used in with the youth? And then as soon as I thought it,
Hmm.
I thought, well, that's kind of a lens. That's kind of an outlandish thought. Like that was my, and it's
It's really not
but
though.
it's not.
Like
You
in
think of these kids on, they're basically on speed, but
right.
um,
Yeah, no, I mean, and it does, it touches receptors and all of those different things. And like, here's the thing. We know that THC in large doses can have an effect on a developing brain. Might some developing brains need to have an effect placed on it? Yes. Do most? Probably not. And there's a lot that goes into not just the idea of what cannabis can do to the brain, but it's sort of like when kids first start using cannabis at a younger age like that, it's not typically in a medicinal setting.
right,
It's typically because they're looking for an escape, the same reason kids use alcohol at that age. And, the idea, I don't think cannabis is a gateway drug, but I think an unhappy person is an unhappy person and they're going to keep finding ways to numb their pain, whether it's, cannabis isn't enough, so they need something else, or alcohol isn't enough, or whatever it is, isn't enough. So we have to be able to separate people who have addictive personalities, people who have things that they're looking to escape from, than people who have other neurological issues, and then what could the positive impact be, and weigh that out the way that we theoretically do with Western medicine.
absolutely. Yeah.
But there are a lot of pediatric studies, especially around epilepsy,
Yes.
huge strides in there, and a lot of a lot of pediatric patients take either high dose CBD, or there are high dose THC cultivars that work for, depending on, because again, everybody's so different.
Mhm.
Like, just because I have ADHD and you have ADHD, it doesn't mean the exact same thing is going to cure me is going to cure you, because I might be more deficient in something that you might be more deficient in and need something different. So that's where it really is personalized, and you have to try different things, not just different modalities for how you consume, but the each plant itself has a different set of medicinal properties. And so when grown and consumed in a way that holds true to that plant, each consumption is going to be slightly different based on how your body is at that point, and then on the cultivar, however you're consuming the cannabinoid and terpene ratios that are in there.
Right. Yeah, I've seen some of those videos where an epileptic was having a they were having a seizure. It showed the seizure. It showed them getting the I don't know if it was straight THC, but what it something under the umbrella, and just the calming. I mean, you could just see like a
Mhm.
wave of the calm
I mean, you can
over.
see they'll hook them up to, to EKGs and like machines, and you can see the difference that it makes in people. And you know, the most powerful thing that people have is their stories. And that's why you do what you do. And so stories in cannabis are no different than stories that people tell everywhere else, except what I will say is, because cannabis has been so stigmatized, what I think is so hard for people to hear is that there is an answer to a lot of the problems that they have that they just didn't know about and was kept from them. And then that makes them kind of angry, which I get.
Hmm.
But it's important that people feel empowered to tell their stories so other people can hear it, so they can start to just break it down a little bit more, right? Like you don't have to necessarily want to try THC beverages yet, but you can like just be comfortable with the fact that they're there in your grocery
Right.
store. And then maybe at some point, you know, like you can try a, like you don't have to jump all in on it. I have been really surprised though at everyone that has jumped all in
Yes,
on it. Like I am hard pressed to find a person that I can offer a THC product to that doesn't take me up on that.
100%. It's
Yeah.
very few. Well, I don't even know if I know. Well, I'm sure there are, but yeah, I mean, I just don't.
But it depends what you offer them.
You're right, and I just don't see people having the issue that they had with it prior to this movement really, taking place in Minnesota, and it just I don't know if it's that the stigma's been more removed or if there's more education on it. I mean, whatever the case, it doesn't matter. No judgment. Like the people are more open, which is
Mm-hmm.
fantastic. Um, but I would challenge anybody who suddenly got on board or who is still kind of teetering. Like, what is it that uh, what is it that got you over the hump?
You know, because I always ask people that question. And really, what I hear is just the fact that it's legal now. They didn't want to do something illegal, they didn't want to be looked at as somebody who does drugs. And that's the crux of it. And so now that it's okay, you know, I don't know that it's going to convert everybody from, you know, drinkers of alcohol to cannabis drinkers. And I honestly, like, like anything, like this is a new industry and we don't have any long-term data on these beverages because a lot of them are made with synthetic cannabinoids. And so we're creating things, we're putting them in beverages. And I get that, like, we do that because that's our culture, but I'm not, we just have no idea what the long-term effects of that. So using, you know, methods like we talked about earlier, traditional infusion methods, well, you are not as easily able to monitor your dosage
Right.
and titrate that way. You at least know that the products that you're consuming and the methods in which they were prepared, and you can manage that chain of command. So you're doing everything organically and, you know, that way if you'd like to do it that way.
So for the average consumer that, might otherwise be pretty crunchy and likes to get things organic and they do
Mm-hmm.
things holistically, which is a growing number of people, what would you suggest that they do if they want to have like, a little bit on hand for in
Mm-hmm.
whatever form?
Because of the 2018 Farm Bill, and that's really what Minnesota's first law was based on. Now companies have wised up to what we started doing in a little bit different capacity, but they're shipping over state lines. So Can is a brand that was in California, and they were probably the first brand that when they saw Minnesota do what they did, they said, "Oh, you know what? Well, we could do a hemp beverage too, and like hit us up online and we can ship to you. We know we can ship over state lines. We can ship CBD, we can ship seeds. This is, you know, like it falls within the guidelines. It's under 0.3% THC by dry weight." So off it goes. And once they started doing that, other companies were kind of like, "Ooh, they're doing it. It's happening. They're getting away with it. Should we try it?" And they're like, "We did." And then they're gummies. And I mean, now legitimately you get Instagram, Facebook ads for this kind of stuff. And I think that's where it's so important for me to help educate people on what it is you're actually buying, because there's so much bad product and bad information out there that if you're not knowledgeable about the different things that you're looking for, if you don't know the inputs to be looking for, if you're not, you know, looking for certain ratios to solve certain issues, you're going to end up lost and confused and
For sure.
probably having a bad time.
Yeah. And you said you are putting this stuff on your Instagram. Is that the best way for people to like? Is that what you said,
Did
or
I
did I
say
miss
that?
that? Maybe you didn't say that.
I
Maybe
don't
I
think
thought that in
that's
my
what I
head.
said.
Like that would be a good thing. You could,
I
put on
know.
your Instagram like a little
I
product
could.
recommendation.
I try to talk on stories. That's my like I think I can do that because I way overthink reels too much. Like it my brain doesn't have the time I need for that because I want to overthink it and
Oh
I
yeah. No,
can't.
I've tried to do uh the rehearse stuff. That's why I like to just pick clips from organic conversation because it's so much more real and authentic, and anything rehearsed is like ugh, for me. Some people are great at it, so kudos to them.
Yeah, I did some recording yesterday. I flew home from Sacramento last night into this morning. I took a red eye, which I've not done in a very long
Oh,
time,
dang.
and I'm a very old lady. But it was interesting doing that and just sort of like coming forth as your authentic self versus trying to read a script. And I'm such a type A prepared, planned, like write it all out because I'm a good writer too. So
Right.
it's like, I want to be able to, and I'm like, I don't think I'm as clever on the fly as I am when I can
Yes.
rewrite it, but you get what you get, I
Yeah,
suppose.
I'm in the same boat. My writing is more articulate always, but you know, it, it's kind of that fine line of wanting to just be
Hmm.
real. Real, pun intended.
Be
What are the
real.
puns?
Be real for no real.
Yeah. Um, but I do think that would be a fantastic thing, in all your free time,
Hmm. Hmm.
to just give us some, like, you know, product recommendations. Maybe they'll send you some free products if you're reviewing them on there. Um,
I do get a lot of free
yeah,
products.
yeah,
And I never complain because I love free products and I
right,
love because I'm a consumer products good girl at heart. Like I love a lotion, I love a cream, but I
right.
love a flower, I love a concentrate. Let me see your packaging. Let me like, and I will tell you all of those
Yeah,
things because I just, I want you to know. I want people to be successful. I want there to be good brands with good missions and good products.
yeah, yeah. Um, so you mentioned one name. Did you say can, or was that like a can that?
Can, yeah, CANN.
Okay, CANN, and that's
And I just mentioned them because they're
got
a
it.
nationally known brand and they have a big presence in the cannabis beverage scene.
And are they like the organic, the types of products?
They are not. No, they don't. They have great branding. They have a lot of really unique flavors. They have these little packets that I like called roadies that you can kind of just keep in your purse and you can tear it open and add it to a sparkling water.
Mm,
And it's like a lemon lime flavor. They have a cranberry sage and a couple other ones. And it's just like a nice little refreshing squirt. But that's what I'm saying is like this is a small thing that you can add to your big can and like the when you get into like all the nuts and bolts of manufacturing and shipping and all of that, it's so much more cost effective and environmentally effective to ship a small packet that I can tear open and put into my beverage that I already have than it is to get an aluminum can, plastic liner, fill it, seal it, and then ship that to me. And a lot of these are filled with sugar, and that's going to make it heavier. And it's, it makes a difference when you really break it down. And that's a big difference too as a consumer, what your bottom line price is going to be.
right. Well, and mocktails have gotten increasingly more popular as.
And
Yes,
delicious.
so good. And I think there's a lot of people who are drinking less or have cut it out altogether. And so having that available and for people to like make their own mocktail at home, I think a lot of people are kind of leaning
Hmm.
towards that.
They are.
Yeah,
There's good, and it's easy too. A lot of these are portable. They're not, you don't have to have a whole 6 pack with you. You can keep a whole stash in your purse.
right, right. You're not going to bring a whole stash 6 pack to.
Hmm. I do.
Okay, so is there like, can you give us some recommendations of some of your can is one, but like some.
Can is just it's a consistent
Got
product
it.
is what I'll say. I like their flavor. It's lower in calories. They're usually only around 35 or 40 calories, not a ton of sugar.
Okay.
And there's different things that you're looking for with beverages, right? So I like to pour mine out into a glass. I like to see what it looks like. I don't want it to be cloudy. I don't want to see the cannabis emulsion in there. When I drink it, I want it to be, light in my mouth. I don't like if it leaves an oily residue. I don't want like a extra long taste. A lot of times the distillate or whatever it is that they use to put the THC in there, it can leave a weird flavor.
Oh,
And so for me, it's a mix of all of those things. How much sugar does it have in it? Like, I don't want a ton of sugar, but sometimes that's what makes it taste really, really good and gets rid of some of this other stuff. Emulsions are usually pretty bitter, so they put bitter blockers in there. Sometimes those leave a weird taste.
mhm.
It's really finding, do I want 5 milligrams? Do I want 10 milligrams? Do I want there to be any CBD in it? Is it something that I want to have a quick onset and quick offset, or am I looking for something that I can build up overnight or over the course of a night to have, kind of a grander experience? But, just like we can process it like a drink an hour is the average that they say for the human body, there are cannabis beverages, the way they've tailored the technology, you can feel it in as quick as 5 minutes, and you can stop feeling it in as quick as 30 minutes. So that's nice for people who don't want to have these extended experiences. Maybe you just want to have one beverage and then feel comfortable getting in your car and driving somewhere. But there are also people who want to have this build upable experience over the night, similar to a night out of drinking. And you have to have different products that are available for all of these different consumption
Right.
methods or
And
reasons.
how do people know what they're getting? Like, I suppose if you're new,
It's really tough, and that's what I was saying. You go into Total Wines, you go into top 10, and it's kind of like, and I think it's really challenging for brands too to differentiate and to be able to educate the people that are working at these stores. These people, they're not cannabis people. They might like to smoke weed, and that's great, but most people don't know anything about beverages and how to sell them and what they taste like. And there are so many of them. They come, they go. It's you need, essentially a beverage person to be there talking about them. You need people to be able to sample them. I know that the people that I know that are in the industry have categorically done better when they've done in-store promotions where they're sampling people on their product. They allow them to try it first, and then they can feel confident. If I'm going to spend $25, at least now I know I like the flavor. You're not going to be able to tell what your experience is like just based on that little sippy cup, but truly flavor is the first thing that most people go to in terms of what they're looking for.
right? Yeah, so it's probably kind of by word of mouth and trial and error.
It is.
Yeah.
Well, and I give a shout out to Earl Giles, and they have a number of really good cannabis beverages, and they have a cannabis happy hour every Wednesday from 5 to 9 with lots of different industry sponsors that come in and highlight and showcase their products. And Earl Giles has all of their brands up there. There's no alcohol up on the top level. It's cannabis only.
Where's that?
Earl Giles is in Northeast. Do you know where Indeed Brewing is?
Yeah.
Yep, it's right over
Oh,
there.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you let me know when you got a Wednesday night. Wednesday night's my going out night.
Oh, Wednesday night's free. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Free. Well, it's this is why too. Like, I really like this setup because Wednesday night my son goes to youth group, and it's right off 35 also, so I can drive him to youth group a little early, and then I go to my cannabis happy hour for an hour and a half, and then he likes to stay a little late and play some Smash Brothers, and then I pick him up and drive him home.
Well, Whitney goes to youth group Wednesday nights as well. Um,
Oh, see,
so yep,
yeah,
that is the night.
it's the mama sneak out.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and obviously,
So yeah, they have great products. I mean, there are a lot of different companies. Mini Grown has very good gummies. I like their products. You can get There's lots of different stores that you can shop at, and we're starting to see, some dispensary chains emerge here. And we'll see, I think a lot of them are going to go for licenses either in cultivation or retail or vertically integrated to be able to cultivate and to sell. But like Hemp House is great. They've got, I think, 3 locations around here. Natrium Wellness is another really good one. Legacy Glassworks, which started in Duluth, is now in Uptown, and they're opening a Woodbury store.
Mm,
They have the Legacy Cup, which is Minnesota's first cannabis cup.
oh no way. Okay, I'm writing these down. I
Yeah, they're all good ones.
want to link.
I'm a big fan of Granny's pretzels, which are like they look like the Snyder's of Handover Square snap ones, but they have delicious coatings on them, which I'm very certain are not good for me. Let's be very clear.
So it's
But they're very, very delicious, especially the cheddar ones.
the pretzels are
Granny's.
oh,
Granny's pretzels.
okay.
But yeah, so what I do, and I I DM the manufacturer like probably once a month to tell him my idea again, where I want him to make a bag that has only 10 milligrams. It still has 50 pretzels, and I want to be able to eat the entire bag because what happens is each of these it's 1 milligram per pretzel, which in the Mary and Jane product works really well because you're probably only going to want 1 or 2 mints, but who eats one pretzel? And they're so good that I want to eat the whole bag. So what I do is I cut them with dots because, dots pretzels, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And so I have like half grannies, half dots, and that's how I can manage so I can have my whole bowl of pretzels, but I don't eat 50 milligrams.
What are the but how many milligrams is like gold for you?
I see this is where people are like, did you feel the beverage? I'm like, I don't know because I'm always high. Like I smoke a lot of flour, I smoke a lot of concentrate. So like most of the time, like I maintain my base level. And most of the beverages or edibles that I eat wouldn't really affect my baseline too much either way.
Yeah.
But there are occasions that I will have like maybe 2 or 3. And so I've done maybe, 25, 30 milligrams that I'll be like, oh, I felt that.
Oh,
Yeah.
that one kicked in a bit.
That was fun. Okay.
Yeah, and for people just starting out 25 or 30 would put them on their ass for sure. So,
I mean, probably
timer.
depending on the person. Yep.
Right.
But yeah, like I said, like 5 is like that is, you're going to probably feel something at 5 if you've never tried it before. It's probably not going to send you to the moon.
Yeah,
It might,
it
though.
might.
You never know. Some people just have tough
Uh-huh.
reactions.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, no, like back to when you were talking about kids and stuff too, like CBD is very beneficial in kids and
Yeah.
with no psychoactive effects. It's anti inflammatory, it's antifungal. Like there's no downside in
Hmm.
giving it to your kids,
Hmm.
except they'll say it tastes bad.
And that is available to kids, CBD.
It's available over the counter. And I think
Yeah.
it's one of those things as a parent, you make that choice. It's a
Right.
non psychoactive, it's like giving your kid echinacea or
Right.
any of these other herbal supplements that we do, St. John's wort.
Yeah. Okay.
Again, like personal choice. You're,
Right. A lot of people give their kids melatonin, and that's also a
yeah,
naturally producing hormone that we all possess. And so, I think CBD is,
along those same
yeah.
lines.
Hmm. Okay, so that was, thank you for the recommendations too, because I do want to link those. I think a lot of people are curious where are just good places to find them. And, because the
Yeah. And
market's so saturated, it's kind of like, whoa, where do I even begin?
the market is saturated. It's not necessarily quality, and people still don't want to go into dispensaries. They want to have the discretion of ordering online. They want people to come into their house. They, would rather go to a party and buy it from someone, which, truly works for the model that we have in Minnesota today.
Hmm.
But it's, most people want things delivered to their door. They don't, we're getting less and less of a face to face interaction society. So I think in the market that we're in right now, the direct to consumer model is a really, really strong one.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I wish people did a little more face-to-face interaction, but I say that as I'm having a
As you're
conversation
zooming me.
behind the screen. I'm going to work up to being able to do face to face with everybody at some point. This is sufficient for now.
It is. You do it. I mean, because there is a whole added face to face ads. It's twice as long, if not three times.
Right. Yeah.
It's just different.
Yeah. It is. It's efficient, anyways. Well, the next time that we connect, hopefully there's more that has been
Some
told.
progress,
Yeah.
yeah, where at
Some
least, there is an opportunity for some provisional licenses to hopefully be released over the summer. So people who have different social equity scores would be able to open cultivation early and open retail earlier, I should say, than all of the other people. So there's a good chance that some of that gets going this summer. I don't think it'll be a ton of people, but it'll just be interesting to see how it plays
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. I will be interested for the follow up. But I think we're headed in the right direction. It's becoming more accessible and
It is. Well, and it's just, more widely known. What I was trying to get at with Can before is, once they started shipping over state lines, all of these other companies realized, oh, we could do a Delta 9 product. So Kiva, which is, I think, a product I've brought you before, is the California based product.
I
They are
know,
in a
how
lot
can
of other
you?
markets. Yep. And they're in
Amazing.
Michigan, they're in Illinois, they're in New York, they're in all these other markets. And I saw the other day that they now are selling their gummies, a hemp based version online. It's $37 for 50 milligrams. And, 100 milligrams is probably less than $20. So because there's an interesting thing that happens once it becomes legal, you get to play with a different set of rules. And because we're not just using THC, which would be simple and make sense, we're growing and harvesting CBD and then converting it to THC. It's much more costly to produce these things that we're using to make it legal to ship over the state line, but it's, molecularly the same.
Mm, interesting.
It's like, it's
It's a loophole,
it's
basically.
cannabis math.
Yeah. Yeah. It well, speaking of
I mean, it's taking advantage of a loophole, right? Because the idea was not really for THC ever to be legal. It was supposed to be for hemp to be legal. And we just figured out the way that if we make it in things that are heavy enough and we use this dry weight, like then we can make it work. But to grow plants that are mostly CBD and only have some THC and to harvest and extract that little bit of THC out of the rest of the CBD is so much more cost prohibitive than it is to just harvest the CBD and change it molecularly.
oh, got it. You have such an amazing understanding of the science of all of it, and I have to.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But I have to ask: were you interested in science before getting into cannabis?
No, and I don't know that I'm like interested in science now. Like it just like I'm interested in everything, right? Like a little bit interested
Yeah.
in everything. And like to the point where like I had a social interaction the other day
Yes.
where somebody told me what they did and I was like, "Oh my god, that's amazing." And I like had all of these follow-up questions and I was like you should have just gone with a right on. Like there was no need for like but I truly, there are very few things in the world that I am not curious about, that I don't want to learn more about. And when I meet somebody who has something, right? Like that's one of the gifts that we all possess is like our knowledge and our experience. And that's something that we can give to other people and it doesn't cost us anything. And it's, sort of like that act of imprinting on someone else or adding more to all of the energy that we're going through. So it's like I always appreciate when somebody responds more enthusiastically than less enthusiastically, and I'm never mad when somebody asks me questions and thinks what I do is cool. And so I guess maybe I just try to like
Pay it forward.
you know well, and also like like my job is to smoke a lot of weed and I realize like that's a cool job. And so I don't want to make people who don't get to do that for their job feel bad. So all jobs are cool.
Oh, what do you do? Oh, that sounds fascinating.
And, like truly, I'm like, oh, like I want to know everything. And
Yeah.
then I'm always like, why do my kids ask so many questions?
They get it from you. Well,
Mm,
it's why our dinner dates always go by very quickly because we
right.
can talk about anything under the sun and we're interested in so many different topics and which by the way we need to schedule that next. So, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And it's like now that it's already patio
I
season,
know it's calling. It is
I'm here
calling.
for it in March.
Yeah. Yeah, and you live in a fun area, so I'll always come to you.
Please do. I know I was disappointed that we couldn't meet up the other night,
I
but
know.
these days, man,
'Tis the season.
and these nights.
Yeah.
Well, and like, yeah, sports and all of the like we did one sport and I'm like, I'm good, man. This is really tough on me and you guys don't care. So,
It's a
we're
lot.
good.
It's a lot, and it's so different now than it was. And I probably sound like every parent throughout history, but it is. It's different now than it was when we were growing up. Most
Hmm.
kids could play a whole bunch of different sports, and it didn't matter if they overlapped or whatever. They could be a participant and all. And now it's like this one track, or at a
Yeah.
very young age, or you have to sacrifice. It's just it's wild.
Yeah, it's a lot. And it's the time and monetary commitment. When I hear people talk about the like things they do for their kids, I'm like, I'm sorry, you sit all weekend in the bleachers with like all weekend? Like what are you talking about?
Yeah, well, it is Gary in my social life as of late, which I love it. I mean, watching the kids do their activities is like it's just as fun, if not more fun than when I used to do it. Because you
Well, because it's all the fun with none of the pain and effort.
That's true. Yes. You just get to be a crazy fan and like I
Yeah.
what they're doing, I mean, I like Whitney dances, okay? I can't give her
Hmm.
any feedback or anything and so I get to just sit and enjoy and everything they do on stage looks amazing to me. So it's wonderful. I mean, yeah, it's a lot of time, but it is cool to just be a fan.
Time well
Yeah.
spent.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like, do you run out of small talk though? Or are
Oh,
you
no,
watching the
I
whole
find
time?
I find my people where I don't have to do
Yeah.
small talk. I mean, I can do enough of small talk, polite small talk, but it's like, yeah, no, I want to sit in the corner with someone and just talk about all the things, the deep
All the
things.
things.
Yeah, the things outside of the dance world. Like, no, I want to talk about the bigger, better
Right.
things. So yeah, you find your people, or you just find
You
people
find
who
your tribe.
can recite moving lines with you and have humor in
Right.
conversation.
Or at least understand the reference. Just
Yeah,
understand the
yeah,
reference or humor me.
yeah,
Just smile and nod.
yes. If I'm gonna throw a friend's quote and you
Give me a
pick
right
it up,
on.
like I might need to come go sit over here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Um,
at least you know you'll be in good company as you sit in the stands tonight.
that's right. See all of our G rockers. I'm gonna wear orange.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
It was yeah, it's there's so much that's wrapped up in that, right? And it was really hard for me at this age to watch the players because I was just like, you have a room full of adults that are not related to any of these kids that are just like they're so excited and it means so much and it's like it is actually so amazing,
Mhm.
but then I'm like, oh my god, they're just kids, and like the kid who let in the goal, like how heartbreaking. And I know it's part of life and resilience and all of that, but it's incredible to see the response that it evokes in people, and it's like it is just so heartwarming for me and so reminiscent of our childhood.
It is. Yeah. Whenever a community comes together and bands toward a common goal, like no matter what sport it is or whatever, it's a pretty cool thing to see. So, and I don't know if you've seen the video going around just about like the history of the hockey community, but that was really cool, and in specifically
I
about
have
Grand
not seen
Rapids.
that. I did see a preview for a new hockey arena book. I don't know if you know
Yes,
anything about that.
yes, me too. I know, I'm excited for them. That's gonna be amazing.
It's a good looking book.
Yeah, he's killing it. Well, good. Okay, I'm going to provide some of these links. I want to encourage you to keep us updated always on all
Yes.
the products and the things to try. Um, you can do a little like do a little like video of you trying something and then like a half hour update. Like here's me a half hour later.
I would have to, yeah, that's my, like, what is a half hour? A half hour is 3 minutes or it's 3 hours.
Or however long.
There
Yeah.
is no in between. Yeah, it's hard too because I don't know that a lot of the products that I consume are the products that people
Right.
want to consume.
Yeah. Yeah. They're not the
Yeah.
mainstreamy.
Let's just say I'm the only one who walks down my street smoking a joint at 6 a.m. I always say the judgment from my neighbors is strong, but not as strong as the weed I smoke.
Oh, that is a
That's
fantastic.
what I need to get. And I don't even think it's like judgment. I just think they're like, yeah, all right.
You're like, I'm gonna do me. I have never
Listen, I'm
seen
going.
I've never seen the show Weeds, but I've had so many people tell me that it's a fantastic show. Have you ever seen it?
It's interesting. And it's like, what's crazy is like that world doesn't, like, it does exist to a certain extent, but that was 20 years ago.
Right.
Like, that's just not relevant so
Right.
much anymore.
Yeah.
It's funny though. I like
20
Kevin
years
Nealon.
ago.
Hmm.
Oh, okay. That's aging us.
Everything was.
Yeah. Everything. Well, the 90s was 10 years ago and will always be 10 years ago.
Exactly.
So,
And will always be 10 years
yeah.
ago.
Okay. Well, I'm not gonna. Oh my gosh, it's 2:22. Okay, that's
I was going to
good
say, ended
to
at
remember.
2:22.
Yep. Well, good
I love
times.
you.
Okay. Well, next on the order, I'll be in touch about our date night. And
Yes, please.
yeah, thank you so much. Always fun to talk with you. You are so knowledgeable in this and funny, and it's always a favorite to have you on. So appreciate you.
Thank you. Yeah, and I always appreciate spending any time with you. I'll take it face to face, I'll take it via Zoom.
Yeah,
Any way you give it to me.
ditto.
Okay, love you.
Love you too.
Bye.
Bye bye.